for somebody like yourself who has something to say, and we are living in a time where you have, countless platforms to say it and to use to reach people. What got you into it's a very different thing to have a voice on a social channel, social platform, to even have a voice in a book and author a book, which is a great accomplishment by, just to put out one book is a huge accomplishment. We could talk, this could be a whole podcast talking about that. But being in front of a room of people, whether that's 25 people or 2,500 people, it's a very different thing to have that kind of live effect or that presence, getting over the fear of that, because it's like one of the number one fears is public speaking. Take us back to that, because that's huge mindset stuff there. How you need to approach that, and how you need to get your reps in to actually get good at delivering your message.
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, podcasting was, so my father has a really good friend who is a writer. And so this author, writer, friend of my dad, his name is Roland Lazenby. And Roland has written about the NBA and superstars in the NBA since like the Showtime Lakers era. So he's written books about Bird and Magic and Michael. He's written about Kobe. He's written, the last time I talked to him, he was working on a book about LeBron James. I don't know if that one's out yet or not. And so, I mean, he literally followed these teams around for decades. And he gave me advice one time. So he was the guy that, like, if ESPN or Fox needed a soundbite about the NBA, they would go to him, and, he would be able to provide, whatever. And so his advice to me was, become the expert in your industry and be the person that people can go to and, get advice, and you kind of level up by being this person that has all these connections and all this information. And it took me a few years to figure out how to implement that advice. I think he gave that to me when I was starting my gym in maybe 2012. Maybe he gave it to me in 2013. I don't know, but it was early on. And so, like we said earlier, I started podcasting in 2015. So it took a while for me to say, okay, I know how to do what he's talking about. But really, for me, starting the podcast wasn't about having a voice. It was, how can I learn from other strength coaches? And then as the podcast grew in scope, it was, how can I learn from, researchers who are, studying the things that I'm interested in, or things that would be useful to, our audience. And so really podcasting I called it like the greatest hack that you could imagine, because you're learning, right? So it's continuing education for you in your field of study. You're putting out content at the same time. So, in the world of content and, putting stuff out, you're doing that. And you're building an incredible Rolodex. I mean, look at, like you said, you guys are almost at 200 episodes. Look at the people that you have, networked with and now created relationships with. And, some of the best advice I've ever been given is, it's not what you know, it's who you know. Or said another way, by another person, that relationship capital is our most important form of capital. And so, I saw starting a podcast as a way to kind of work all those things simultaneously. I grew up, we listened to books on tape when I was a kid. So I like consuming information, audio style. I mean, I'm kind of ADD, so I like doing things as opposed to like watching a video or, reading a book. So, I mean, podcasting was just a natural fit for me. It was kind of the platform or the, it was the one that made the most sense. And so that was the start for podcasting. And then as it built and as it grew, you mentioned the book and then speaking. And I think one piece of advice that I would, I guess two things on speaking. two reasons that I think a lot of people are really nervous. Number one, they're not prepared. Every major talk that I've ever given, I have rehearsed multiple times. In fact, the first few that I gave that were overseas at like big events, I actually filmed myself practicing them, and I shared the video with other people and had other people critique. We were timing it because I only had 20 minutes on stage. And so, by the time like game day came, I mean, you just think about it just like any other sporting event. When game day comes, there are no unknown variables. I'm not changing anything on game day. So all I have to do is go out there and do what I know how to do. And I think that's one of the mistakes that a lot of people make with speaking is they don't practice enough. They don't prepare enough. And then the other side, or I guess the second big piece of advice would be, it's not about you. And again, one of the reasons that so many people are nervous or scared of public speaking is, they're focused on themselves. They're focused on how they're going to be received. And I get it. That's kind of human nature. But, I don't know how deep you guys go in your work or in the podcast, but I mean, that's an ego thing. If I'm worried about how my message is going to be received or how I'm going to be seen, that's me living in the ego. And for me, I always get out of that. And I just think of myself as a vessel. I am merely this, thing that is a conduit that is, delivering this message. I mean, I don't own this information. I mean, I've gotten it. It's other people's research. It's, other people's, it's, case studies and stories. I just compile it in a way that, is informative and entertaining and educational and, telling stories and, whatever it is. And so I'm just the vessel that is delivering the information that people need. And I think that would be another really crucial thing to keep in mind if you're going to be a public speaker is it's not about you, it's about them. And can you make them better? Can you solve their problems? And if you do that, you're going to make an impact, you're going to get invited back, and you're going to get more gigs. And it's a self-perpetuating cycle that way. If you show up, if you're prepared, if you do well, if you help the people, and what job doesn't build and grow when you approach it that way?